This is the Lelit Bianca. It's the V3 and a common model that a lot of people have been researching when they look at buying a dual boiler HX style coffee machine. Now I did do a full video on this in the golden sands color where we deep dive around all the tech specs and a lot more information you might want to know about this machine. However, I want you to experience what it's like to actually make a coffee of it. So let's make a coffee now and I'll show you about the flow profile and some of the settings in here that help you make a better brew at home. The most unique thing about the Bianca is the ability to change the pressure profiling, the temperature of the water that you're going to brew with, and have control and being able to play with different coffee. And the best way to show you that is I'm going to make a coffee all the way through and just talk through a few of the different things. And I feel using a single dose grinder is the best way to pair with something like the Bianca. And the reason being is it allows you to make changes very quickly in terms of your grind if you're going to have some sort of variation when you're using pressure profiling. Because if you're the kind of person that just wants to put coffee straight into a handle and then tamp it down and you keep repeating that process day in and day out while you're making a cappuccino or a flat white or latte, that's totally fine. But if you're going to really deep dive into the features here of pressure profiling and temperature control, those kind of grinders aren't going to allow you that flexibility. You'll have a lot of wastage. So by having a single dose grinder like this, essentially we can make rapid changes really quickly to help suit the technology we have in the brew head. Now it's pretty simple how this works. We have a rotary pump inbuilt and essentially as we turn on the lever, we get 9 bar of pressure coming through the E61 group head. Now if you want to vary that manually, you can use this flow controller. This is in the full open position, which is 9 bar. And here is closed. And I can show you that pretty easily by running it and then we can reduce it right off or we can put it back on. There's a little trick there which I'll come back to, but see here how we can take that flow away or bring it back. So that is the flow control. The part that quick eyes might have seen is what we call pre-infusion. Now that's another setting where we actually activate the pump. It turns on for 2 seconds, then it turns off for 2 seconds. Then we've got low flow and high flow, which are 2 other settings of the pump. And basically what it means is if you have low flow, which I've got set for 3 seconds at the moment, the pump won't kick in and give full power to that rotary pump to give it the 9 bar pressure. It'll actually only give it a low amount of power. So it's kind of pre-infusion and low flow, then it bumps back up to 9 bar. So they're pretty unique things that you don't find in any other machine. Now because we do have our bottomless portafilter handle here, the pre-infusion is going to allow this coffee bed to expand and brew a little bit and fill some of those holes that we might experience or channeling that you might have heard about in a coffee puck. I'm going to keep it pretty simple today, give a bit of a level. I'll use my NCD distributor just to level that out. And I'll use the tamper that comes in the back box with the Bianca, which is a 58.55. It's got this unique little edge on here, which is a little bit wider, which gets right into the edge of the basket, which is perfect for when you're using the bottomless portafilter to make sure we're tamping right around the outside edge. So we reduce channeling on the outside of the basket. So that's an awesome tamper that comes free with the machine. So when we're going to brew right now, we lock in our handle, pop our cup under, we are set for 9 bar pressure because that flow control is all the way open. We'll activate our pump and we'll give ourselves 9 bars. So right now we're just getting 9 bar pressure, 2 seconds of pre-infusion on, 2 seconds off. And you can see the pressure has come right up, way past 9 bar actually. You can see under here the extraction is starting to brew and it's going to make its way through. Now I might be a little bit fine right now, so I need to go back and change the grind size to make sure that that's actually going to come through. Now this is where partly we're thinking about grind, but also flow. So I'm set at 9 bar, but essentially, if I was doing this same process and I was only going to give it 3 bar of pressure, the grind that we had set for 9 won't work for 3. It simply won't make its way through. So you've got to be able to adjust the grind based on the pressure or the flow that you're going to put into that puck. Now a lot of people start quite low and then increase up to a higher speed, and you can see this is starting to come out. It's super syrupy, super thick. You may enjoy this or you may not. However, I'm going to stop this extraction and we're at 65, 66 seconds. And I know what you're thinking. The recipes we always talk about are 22.5 grams in our basket. We want to get a 2-to-1 ratio of 45 grams, and we want to be at about 30 seconds. Any recipe goes out the window the minute you start to play with flow control, because you're not providing a 9-bar pressure to that coffee puck anymore. So is it good? Is it something you might enjoy? Well, you've got to play. And this is the journey that you go on when you start to play with pressure profiling. Not only with the dual boiler here, you can do pressure profiling, but you can change the temperature of this water with the second boiler, so that you could match the temperature that is needed to extract that light roast coffee that you might have. Now I'm set at 95 degrees, and you can see that on here very easily. So if you went really light, like a light filter roast or something like that, you might have to jump up to 96 or 97 degrees because it's so dense and it's hard to get the flavor out. But if you go into a darker roast, you might want to drop that down to maybe 92 or even 89. That's a bit of an interesting one when you try that with a bit of a darker roast to get the dissolvable solids into the cup. But if you have a look at this here, we haven't over really extracted this. It is very thick, very syrupy. Like, that is so thick. It's crazy how thick it actually is. And it's very molassesy and very, very intense. But it's not bitter. It's not over extracted, because we actually had a different pressure applied to that and we didn't run way too much coffee through. So it does throw a lot of the myths essentially, or the standardizations of recipes out the window when you start to play with flow profiling. So we're going to make another coffee, and I'm just going to go a little bit coarser because I want that to flow through the coffee bed. I can see here that we did have a little bit of water on there, so we definitely had a pre-infusion. There was water that allowed this puck to expand, and it didn't quite hit the top line there of the shower, of the basket, I should say. And it's a little bit soft and a little bit spongy. There was a little air bubble there, but we haven't really had any channeling. So I'm just going to start again, give it a knockout and a bit of a clean. Let's see what we can get by increasing the grind to be faster, and then we're going to have some more effect with the flow controller because we're going to vary the pressure. So we've got another 19.5 grams that we're going to put into this standard portafilter and the basket that comes with the Bianca, and I've gone coarser. So we're going to hot start our DF54, pop in those grinds, pop our lid on, and let them grind through. Now this is going to allow us the ability to play with a lower pressure and pre-infuse perhaps, because even though we have our pump set for 2 seconds on and 2 seconds off, it's still at 9 bar. But if we take this and let's say we bring it to about 3, we'll get pre-infusion of those first 2 seconds and the first low profile, or the low pump pressure essentially, of the setting in the machine. It'll all only come through whatever is set on this handle. So keeping it nice and simple again, just putting our coffee bed in. We'll just give it a bit of a level out. Use our distribution tool, the NCD. Give it another tamp. And I'm not going really crazy on my tamp, and we definitely need to have consistent tamp pressure when you want to play with profiling pressures, because you can get yourself in all sorts of trouble. Now, I don't know if I flushed that since last handle. Whoop, I hadn't, so I'm going to do a quick little flush there to make sure that the shower screen is all clean. And always good to do that with the E61 group head to get the temperature to where you need to be. So we'll pop in our handle, pop in another cup. Now you can see that we are set at about 3 bar. Let's pop that on and see where we get up to in pump pressure. There you go, in the pre-infusion. We didn't actually get any back pressure yet to be able to measure what's happening here. So let's just try and keep that to a low pressure. Now, because even though we're providing such a low pressure to that puck, it's still getting pressure in the head, and this is where it gets a bit tricky. It's the back pressure that's happening inside the group head here, even though the flow is really, really low. So now this is going to start to reduce because the pressure we built up essentially is making its way through the coffee. So people think that flow control is, 3 bar, 9 bar or whatever, but if you allow it to build up with pressure because you have provided that back pressure of the coffee puck, it'll essentially end up getting to a high pressure. And that's what's happened here. So we're basically doing a reducing from 10 all the way down to basically a minimum amount of pressure, which ended up at 6. So you've got to understand what's actually happening. The minute you have too coarse to grind, you can't go 3 bar, 6 bar, 3 bar, because you've built up pressure on top of that coffee puck and it has to go somewhere. Now the only way that you can get rid of that pressure, if you wanted to, is to make that lever go all the way down, because that'll take the pressure from the group head and spit it down through the exhaust. So that's how you would actually go 3, 9 and back to 3. But then your time is going to start and stop. So there's a lot of different things you've got to consider when you're playing with flow control. So is it something that I would use all day and every day? Probably not, but it's definitely fun to play with when you're getting a whole different type of extraction, because this was a much longer extraction. There was a very big pressure. We actually got it up to 9 or nearly 10 bar, and then we reduced the pressure. So we had a softer finish on the flow to that coffee bed. So again, you can play with a whole lot of different things. But does it taste good? That's up to you. Do you need to start recording your recipes? Yes, 100%. You need to make a catalogue of what pressure you're starting with, where you're ending up, and then make some notes so that you can work out whether that is actually a coffee that you enjoy or not. Did you increase the acidity? Did you increase the sweetness? Did you get more viscosity or balance out of that profile? Most people who start to play with a lighter pre-infusion and a 3 bar pressure tend to get a little bit more acidity and more lighter flavors coming through, because we're not getting that heavy caramelization coming through. But again, you've got to make sure that your grind isn't too fine, like I showed you before, which just no matter what I did, because the grind was so fine, it still built up pressure to 9 bars. So just something to consider when you're having a play with one of these machines. Is the Bianca flow control something for everybody? I'd probably say not for everybody, but it's a nice to have. It certainly means that you've got an option to play with it. If you do have a mate that comes over and you want to really geek out on coffee and play with something, go for it. That's fine. If you're finding the issue that I just showed before, that the pressure did still go to 9 bar, underneath the bottom of the machine here, you can actually adjust the pump pressure so it's not at 8 bar or 9 bar. You can drop it right down to 3, so it only gives you a 3 the whole time that the pump is activated. So there's so much room to be able to play and produce different types of coffee. So we've got a small cup, a full double shot there extraction. You can see there's no paleness, no blonding in that shot at all. So it's really not what we've seen when we try and heavily extract everything out of a coffee in a 2-to-1 ratio. The steam is great, it's super silky, really good. You can pour off your pretty patterns if you need to. There you go. That's pretty much a 10 out of 10 coffee that you would pay for at a cafe. Probably better if you've been able to get the right temperature, the right pressure, and a profile for the coffee beans that you have inside your grinder. So what does it taste like? Well, let's give it a go. Oh, so that isn't as intense as you might think. Because of that lower reducing pressure, there's far less caramelization in it. It's actually a bit fruitier and a bit lighter in the body for sure. It's very smooth. If anything, I think I need an extra shot in there because it is so balanced, because it is so smooth, and we didn't get that high 9 bar pressure coming out. It's really balanced actually. Wow, that is a very different coffee that I would get out the front in the Marzocco, that we might have that full 9 bar pressure all the way through. And that's what you might enjoy. You can have a higher extraction or a higher yield ratio, but at a lower pressure, and it will change the whole flavor profile that you're going to get in the cup. The minute you add milk to something like that, it's a totally different adventure that you will either overpower or maybe even underpower that coffee or the espresso you've actually extracted from that lower profile. So it's a whole world to be able to play. As I said earlier, is it something for everybody? I think it's just a nice to have, but it's cool to have it. It usually sits in a price point in the Bianca, fully features over some of the competitors out there with the blacks, the timbers, and all the pressure profiling and the digital menu. So I think it's definitely a machine you should look at when you're looking at that dual boiler style machine for home. Like I said, it can be plumbed in with a rotary pump. You've got a 3-litre tank on the back here, might even be 2.5, check the specs on that one, but you can move it left or right. So if you've got some challenges in bench space, it can help you there as well. Now I know if you're looking into this machine, the Bianca with the flow profile, you probably have investigated some of the other machines out there like the Marzocco GS3. There is a very distinct difference between having a flow controller like this and the GS3. And the reason is because when you adjust this flow here, the extra pressure, let's say we've built up 9 bar of pressure and you go back down to give it 3, that pressure stays in the group head. It doesn't go anywhere. As I said before, you have to exhaust the pressure out through down into the drip tray. Where in the Marzocco GS3, as you vary this, the back pressure actually ends up in the drip tray. So it is giving 3 bar, up to 9 bar and coming back to 3 because you are exhausting out that excess pressure. So you can't fairly compare the Bianca with the GS3 if you're chasing that perfect control when you're looking at flow control in a coffee machine. So I hope that helps you understand what it's like to brew a coffee on the Lelit Bianca V3. It's definitely an experience that you can play as much as you like, or you can bring it back to the simple day-to-day and just make a consistent coffee every single day. I think it's something that you need to consider about this pressure profiling. A lot of people say, your mates, hey, you gotta have that, you know, you're gonna enjoy it. But it's not something I do every single day in my own coffees. I've had pressure profiling machines a lot over the years, but I haven't always used them every single day. For me, just getting back to keeping it simple and being consistent is what we all love usually when we go for that daily cup of coffee. And the Bianca is definitely an outstanding option when you're looking to have that consistency as well. Or a bit of fun play on the weekend when you get yourself some special beans. Anyway, if you've got any questions, pop them down below and hopefully the community can share their experiences about the Bianca and whether they've enjoyed the pressure profiling or they've had a few little challenges. But if you are getting one of these machines, I will say make sure you know how to use it at 9 bar. Get recipes really perfected before you start to play with pressure profiling, because if you start with pressure profiling and play with all those recipes, you're not going to have the best outcome with coffee because you don't understand actually what's happening in this group head and the pressure being applied to the coffee puck. Anyway, thanks very much for watching everyone. We'll catch you next time. Cheers.